$700 for the rifle with the American name and no scope. $630 for the one nobody recognizes, and that one comes with a scope already bolted on top. Same barreled action, same factory, same country of origin. It isn't America. Both of those rifles are sitting on a rack right now, in a store somewhere near you, about 3 feet apart. And the man behind the counter will happily let you carry out the more expensive one, with less on it, and shake your hand while you feel like you just made the smart, grown-up, all-American choice. I know he will. I stood behind that counter. I rang up both of these guns more times than I can count, and I watched people talk themselves into the wrong one almost every week. So here's what I'm going to do for you, because nobody at that counter is going to. I'm going to show you which of these rifle names is really the same gun underneath. I'm going to show you the ones that everybody, the forums, the videos, the guy at the range with the strong opinions swears are the same gun, and flat out are not. Because getting that part wrong is how you overpay in the other direction. And I'm going to show you the one single way to buy this rifle that makes the whole premium you've been sold disappear. None of this comes from me taking a rifle apart on a workbench. I'm not an engineer, and I'm not going to pretend to be one for a camera. This comes from the sheets, the distributor sheets, the spec cards, the country of origin line printed right there for anyone who bothers to read it, and the invoice margins I used to see on my side of the counter that you never do. That's the whole trick. The paperwork already tells the truth. People just don't read the paperwork. Let me start with the name that started all of this because it's the biggest one on the wall, Weatherby. Weatherby has a heritage most gun companies would trade a building for. Roy Weatherby, the fast magnum cartridges, the 9-lug Mark V action that a certain kind of hunter still talks about the way people talk about a first truck. That's real, and I'm not here to take it from anybody. But somewhere along the way, Weatherby needed a rifle that regular people could afford, a rifle to sit under the Mark V and catch the guy who wanted the name but couldn't stretch to the flagship. So in 1970, they introduced the Vanguard. And here's the thing the heritage doesn't mention. The Vanguard was never built the way the Mark V was built. From day one, in 1970, the Vanguard's barreled action, the barrel and the action, the heart of the rifle, the part that actually contains the shot, was made by a company called Howa Machinery in Japan. Not in California, not in Wyoming. In Japan. This isn't a rumor, and it isn't a hit piece. It's on Weatherby's own website. It's an American Rifleman, the National Rifle Association's own magazine. Weatherby's own chief executive has said it out loud in an interview. The barreled action is manufactured in Japan, and it always has been. There's even a nice little irony buried in the timeline. Howa started building the flagship Mark V for Weatherby around 1971, right about the same time the Vanguard got going. So for a stretch of years, the fancy American legend and the budget rifle underneath it were both coming out of the same Japanese plant. So when you pick up a Vanguard and feel that all-American weight in your hands, the metal that matters, the barrel and the receiver, crossed an ocean before anybody in this country touched it. Now stay with me, because this is the part that turns one overpriced rifle into an actual pattern. And the pattern is the whole point. This isn't a story about Weatherby getting caught doing something dirty. Nothing here is illegal, nothing here is even hidden if you read the label. This is a story about how the same piece of machinery gets flown across the Pacific, gets a name stamped on the side of it, gets a story wrapped around that name, and comes out the far end, costing you more, while the plain, honest version of the exact same machine sits 3 feet down the rack for less. It's a price ladder, and the rungs of that ladder aren't made of steel. They're made of names and the feelings those names give you. And from my old seat behind the counter, I can tell you exactly why that ladder exists, because I watch the margins that you never get to see. A plain barreled action from overseas is cheap to bring in. Every rung you climb after that, the stock, the name, the guarantee, the story, costs the company a little and lets them charge you a lot. The name is the highest margin part of the entire rifle, because a name costs almost nothing to stamp on and sells for real money. That's not a scandal. That's just how branding works, in rifles and in trucks and in coffee and in everything else. The only problem is when the name you're paying a premium for is quietly implying a fact, like where the thing was born, that the rifle itself would never say out loud, because the Vanguard is not the only rifle that's really a Howa underneath. Not even close. Before I name the others, let me tell you what a Howa actually is, because the whole con depends on you thinking the cheap one is the compromise. It isn't. The Howa 1500 is a bolt action that the company introduced around 1979, mostly for buyers outside Japan, and the vast majority of them leave the factory stripped down to just the barreled action, ready for somebody else to wrap a name and a stock around. It's a Mauser-style action, cock on open, a conventional 90-degree bolt lift, a 3-position safety, a claw extractor, and an integral recoil lug machined right into the receiver. Since about 2011, it's even come with its own 2-stage trigger, straight from the factory. The reputation among the people who actually shoot them runs from solid to quietly excellent. And there's a whole aftermarket built on top of it, triggers and stocks and chassis and barrels, precisely because the bones are good enough to build on. This is no obscure oddity either. There was a stretch a few years back where the plain Howa was one of the best-selling bolt-action rifles on the biggest gun auction site in the country, and I'll mark that as a dated snapshot rather than today's ranking. So understand what's happening here. The budget name isn't hiding a worse rifle. In a lot of cases, the budget name is the same rifle with less of a story lied to you about it. Now, the other jerseys. If you're old enough, or you shop the used racks like I do, you've seen a Smith Wesson bolt-action rifle, the Model 1500. Smith Wesson, about as American a name as exists in this business. The name on the revolver on your grandfather's hip. Well, the Smith Wesson Model 1500 rifle was made for Smith Wesson by Howa in Japan. That one's confirmed by the National Rifle Association's own Firearms Museum, which has one behind glass with a little card that says exactly that. Same trunk, different name on the side. Smith Wesson sold that Howa-built rifle and a deluxe 1700 version of it, right up until 1984, when the company walked away from long guns entirely. Now, I have to stop you right here, because this is exactly the kind of place where a lazy version of this video would get greedy and lie to you, and I'd rather lose the clean story than lose your trust. Not every Smith Wesson bolt rifle was a Howa. The older ones, from before the 1500 line, were built in Sweden by Husqvarna. So if somebody tells you every Smith Wesson bolt gun is secretly a Howa, they're wrong, and now you know more than they do. It's the 1500 and the Deluxe 1700 that trace back to Japan, and nothing older than that. Keep pulling the thread. When Smith Wesson stepped out of the rifle business, Mossberg picked up that same Howa line and sold it under their own name, starting in 1985, the Mossberg 1500, the 1550, the 1700, and dropped it a couple of years later. Interarms imported the same Howa rifle too, under their own number. The list of American-sounding and familiar names bolted onto that one, Japanese barreled action, is longer than most people would ever guess. And here's where it gets good for you, the buyer. When Interarms folded in the late 90s, a few of their people bought up the Howa inventory and started an importer out of Nevada, and that's who brings the plain Howa into this country today, under its own name, in scope packages that undercut the branded versions so hard it's almost rude. By one figure from inside that importer, they move something like 30,000 of these rifles a year in the States, and I'll flag that as their number, reported in an interview, not something I can independently confirm. But you don't need the exact count. You just need to understand that the obscure budget rifle is nothing of the kind. It's everywhere. It's just wearing the name nobody taught you to want. That's the reveal. That's the whole engine of this thing, and I want to say it as plainly as I can, because it's the sentence the marketing spends real money making sure you never think. The thing being sold to you was never a different rifle. It was a different jersey on the same player. The steel is the same steel. What changes, rung to rung up that ladder, is the name, the stock wrapped around it, and the story you get told at the counter. You're not buying a better gun. In a lot of cases, you're buying a better feeling about the gun. And the single most expensive feeling on that entire rack is the feeling that you bought something American. So before you go one step further, do yourself a favor. Go find the video on this channel where I take apart the same exact trick in hunting scopes, the same optical guts, 3 different price tags, 3 different logos. Because once you see this pattern in one aisle, you cannot unsee it in the next one. Subscribe, so the next time you're standing at a counter about to get talked into a name, my voice is in the back of your head instead of the salesman's. All right, now I owe you the honest part, and I'm going to give it to you, even though it makes my job harder, because honesty is the only thing this channel has to sell. The Weatherby Vanguard is not a ripoff in the way the internet loves to scream. The premium over a bare Howa is not enormous. Depending on the week and the caliber, you're often looking at something like $60 to $130 between a Vanguard and a comparable Howa on the same shelf. And that money is not vanishing into a hole. It buys real things, and I'm going to lay them out fairly, one by one, because if I hide them from you, I'm doing the same trick I'm accusing them of. 1. Weatherby backs the Vanguard with a sub-minute of angle guarantee, which in plain English means they promise it'll put 3 shots inside about an inch at 100 yards, from a cold barrel with the right ammunition, and the rifle ships with a target they actually fired to prove it before it left. That's a real promise with a real piece of paper behind it. Weatherby has leaned on that promise hard enough over the years to give it its own marketing name, badging it first as an MOA. Rifle, and later calling it range certified. Fine by me. It's a genuine feature and it's fair to charge for it. 2. The trigger. The early Vanguards had a trigger that a lot of owners complained crept and dragged, enough that replacing it was almost a rite of passage. Weatherby answered that years back with a reworked 2-stage trigger that breaks cleaner and lighter, and the current rifles ship with it. 3. The final assembly, the fit, the finish, the quality check, and the American warranty and customer service, all of that happens here, in Sheridan, Wyoming, where Weatherby moved the company a handful of years ago. If something goes wrong, you're calling Wyoming, not Japan. For some buyers, $60 to $130 for a signed accuracy promise, a better trigger, and a warranty desk that answers the phone in English is money well spent. I'm not going to stand here and pretend that's nothing, but read that list back to yourself, slowly, because here is exactly where the trick lives. Every single thing that premium buys you is a service, a guarantee, a trigger, a quality check in Wyoming, a warranty. Those are all fine, defensible reasons to spend a little more, and not one of them is what the branding is selling you. The branding isn't selling you, we double-checked it in Wyoming. The branding is selling you a name, a heritage, and a flag, and it's counting on you to fill in the last blank all by yourself, the blank that reads, "So this must be an American rifle." Nobody at the counter has to lie to you. They just have to let you assume. And the marketing gives them all the cover they need, because a rifle assembled in Wyoming gets to wave Wyoming around, while the line that says where the barrel and receiver were born stays in small print on the box. I had a man argue with me once, right across the glass, that his Vanguard was made in America. Nice guy, dead certain. He'd owned 3 of them over the years. I didn't fight him on it because what was I going to do? Pull the box and read him the fine print to win a Tuesday afternoon. But that man is the whole video in one customer. The rifle never told him it was American. The name told him, the flag on the wall told him, and he filled in the rest for free, the way the whole system is built for him to. And here's the part that keeps it all clean and legal. Assembled in America is a phrase with a lot of daylight in it. It's true, it's tidy, and half the products in your house lean on some version of it. A rifle can have its barreled action born on the far side of the world, get married to a stock and checked over in Wyoming, and wear that Wyoming address with a completely straight face. Nobody's breaking a rule. That's exactly what makes it work. The most effective redirections are never the illegal ones. They're the ones where every single word is defensible, and the impression those words leave behind is the part that isn't true. The paperwork says the barreled action is made in Japan. The feeling in your chest says stars and stripes, and the price tag quietly charges you for the feeling while handing you the paperwork. That's the con, and it works precisely because there's just enough real value stapled to it to make you feel reasonable. You didn't get robbed, you got redirected. You walked in thinking you were paying extra for an American rifle, and you walked out having paid extra for a warranty desk and a story, sitting on top of a Japanese barreled action that came from the same place as the budget gun you were too proud to look at. Now let me arm you, because knowing the con is only half of it. The other half is not getting robbed in the opposite direction by overpaying for a rifle you thought was a Howa and wasn't. This is where I watched people lose money going the other way, buying up because somebody online swore everything is secretly a Howa. It isn't. So write these down, because each one of these is a mistake with a $sign on it. The Weatherby Mark V, the flagship, the 9-lug legend, is not a Howa today. Howa did build Mark V actions for a stretch decades ago, which is where the confusion comes from, but the current Mark V barreled action is made in Minnesota by a company called ATEC. So if a seller tries to tell you a modern Mark V is just a fancy Howa, he either doesn't know or he's hoping you don't. Different rifle, different country, different animal entirely. The current Mossberg Patriot is not a Howa. And this one trips up almost everybody, because the vintage Mossberg 1500s from the 80s genuinely were Howas. So people just assume the modern Mossberg bolt gun must be too. It is not. The Patriot is Mossberg's own design, a barrel nut action built here in the States. It borrows a look here and there, sure, but looking familiar and being the same rifle are two very different things, and the difference is your money. Vintage Mossberg 1500 Howa. Modern Mossberg Patriot, not a Howa. Do not mix them up. The Interarms Mark 10 and the Whitworth rifles are not Howas either. Those are Mauser pattern actions made in what was then Yugoslavia by Zastava. A completely different family tree. And here's the part that makes it nasty. Interarms also imported the real Howa under a different number. Same importer, two totally different rifles on the same invoice. Read the model, not just the name on the box. And the Golden Eagle 7000, which trips up the sharp guys precisely because it's a Japanese rifle from that same era, is not a Howa. Different Japanese maker entirely. Being made in Japan and being a Howa are not the same thing, and the people who assume they are will pay for the assumption, just like the people who assume the Vanguard is made in Wyoming. So here's your map, clean. The real Howa family, the one barreled action wearing many names, is the Howa itself, the Weatherby Vanguard, the Smith Wesson 1500 and 1700, the vintage Mossberg 1500, 1550 and 1700, and the old Interarms number. Those are jerseys on the same player. The impostors, the ones people wrongly drag into it, are the Weatherby Mark 5, the modern Mossberg Patriot, the Interarms Mark 10 and Whitworth Mausers, and the Golden Eagle. Knowing which list a rifle belongs to is worth real dollars in both directions, and now you know it, and the counter guy is hoping you don't. Which brings us to the part you came for. What do you do with all of this on Saturday morning when you're standing in front of the rack with a card in your pocket? Here's the answer, laid out flat. If you want the Weatherby, buy the Weatherby, but buy it with your eyes open. Buy it because you want the accuracy guarantee with the signed target, because you want a warranty desk in Wyoming, because you want that specific trigger and that specific stock, and because you've decided those services are worth $60 to $130 to you. Those are real reasons to spend real money. Buy it for the paperwork it comes with, not for a flag that isn't on the paperwork. But if what you want is the most rifle for the fewest dollars, the play is almost comically simple, and it's the inversion I opened this whole thing with. You can buy the plain Howa, the same barreled action, in a package that already includes a mounted, bore-sighted scope, for around $630, while the bare Weatherby, no glass on it at all, sits right next to it closer to $700. Let that land. The unbranded version comes with a scope and costs less than the branded version with nothing on it. You are not giving up the good part, the barreled action, the part that came from Japan either way. You're only giving up the name, the warranty desk, and the story, and the market has priced that swap so that walking away from the name hands you free glass and change back. That's the knee in the value curve. Scoped Howa for around $630 versus bare Weatherby for around $700. Everything above that line, you're paying for services and feelings. Just make sure you know which of the two you're buying. Prices move week to week, so check the day you shop. But that gap has been sitting there in plain sight the whole time, waiting for somebody to point at it. And I'll hand you one more wrinkle because somebody in the comments is about to bring it up anyway. Down at the rock bottom, stripped out end of the shelf, a bare bones Weatherby can sometimes slip in under the cheapest plain Howa. That doesn't break the point. It proves it. The badge was never a fixed tax bolted onto the gun. It's a story, and depending on which exact configuration you're standing in front of, that story gets marked up or marked down. The steel underneath never changes. Only the number on the tag and the feeling attached to it do. So don't shop the name, and don't even shop the brand's reputation. Shop the specific rifle in front of you on the specific day, and let the country of origin line and the price tag tell you the truth the counter won't. So let me bring it back to where we started, because I want this stuck in your head the next time a name tries to charge you for a country. $700 for the American name with no scope. $630 for the honest one with the scope already on it. Same barreled action, same factory, same ocean it crossed to get here. The premium was never a lie, exactly. It was a redirection. You thought you were paying extra to buy American, and what you were really paying for was a warranty desk in Wyoming, stapled to a story about a flag, sitting on top of a Japanese barreled action that the budget gun on the same rack was built from too. None of that makes the Weatherby a bad rifle. It makes it a rifle you should buy for the right reason or not at all. And it makes the plain Howa one of the quietest bargains on the wall, sitting there with a scope already on it, waiting for the one customer in 10 who reads the country of origin line before he reads the name. So do this the next time you've got one of these in your hands. Flip the box over and find the country of origin line before you fall in love with anything printed on the front of it. Ask the man behind the counter where the barreled action is made, not where the rifle is assembled, and then watch which of those two answers he gives you. Those are two different questions with two different answers, and the whole distance between them is this entire video. Be that customer. Read the sheet, not the jersey. And the next time somebody at a counter lets you assume you're buying American, you'll know exactly what question to ask, and exactly how much that quiet little assumption was about to cost you.